The map on the screen shows the geographical scale of Viking raids during the 9th and 10th centuries. The Vikings originated from Scandinavia, including present-day Norway, Denmark and Sweden. The red arrows illustrate their sudden and irregular raids across the North Sea toward Frankish territories. These attacks mainly targeted northern Francia and, by using major rivers, reached deep into inland regions. At first, the Vikings were seen as pagan raiders who attacked villages and spread fear among the local population. For the Frankish world, these raids created constant instability. Over time, however, this violence led to unexpected transformation. The Vikings did not remain temporary raiders. They began to settle in Frankish lands and gradually became involved in political relationships. To understand this change, three key factors must be considered: the early raids and Frankish weaknesses, the Christianization of Viking leaders through political agreements, and the cultural interaction that produced a new Norman identity combining Norse and Christian values.
By the mid-9th century, Viking raids in Frankish territory started to change. Instead of striking and living, the Vikings began establishing winter camps along the major rivers of the region. At the same time, the Caroline Empire, once powerful and unified, was breaking apart. Rival families controlled different regions, and political unity collapsed. This fragmentation had real consequences. The Annals of St. Bertin record that in 845, the Northmen ravaged everything along the Seine, revealing how quickly Viking ships could move and how unprepared the Franks were. The same chronicle remarks too, no help could be found, for the realm was weakened by internal discord. In other words, the Franks were too divided to defend their own lands. The Vikings immediately recognized this weakness. Their long ships allowed them to avoid Frankish cavalry, strike exactly where they wanted, and disappear before any army could respond. This mobility turned political chaos into opportunity, helping Viking warbands gain wealth and influence across the region. But the real turning point came with the winter camps. The Annals of St. Vaz note that in 882, the Northmen camped for the winter at Condé and from there laid waste to surrounding areas without encountering resistance. These were no longer temporary stops, they were strategic bases. Historians like Simon Kaplan explain that by building these camps, the Vikings learned the region's internal fractures and used them with increasing effectiveness. Instead of returning to Scandinavia, they studied local rivalries, engaged with communities, and strengthened their position year after year. Meanwhile, the Frankish leadership, weak, divided, and unable to remove them by force, had no choice but to negotiate. This gradual shift from violence to diplomacy eventually produced one of the most important political agreements of the early medieval world, the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte in 911, which formalized Viking settlement and marked the beginnings of the Norman identity. What began as sudden raids ended as a long-term transformation, one that reshaped the political and cultural landscape of Frankish Europe.
The transformation of Viking raiders into Christian lords within the Frankish political system marked a major turning point in early medieval Europe. Former Viking warriors, once feared as pagan attackers, gradually became integrated into the Frankish world as defenders and rulers. This image represents the outcome of that transformation. Viking leaders operating within a Christian and feudal framework, no longer as outsiders but as legitimate figures of authority. This shift did not happen through conquest alone, but through political negotiation, religious conversion, and mutual interests. A crucial moment in this transformation was the conversion of Viking leaders to Christianity. According to the historian Dudo of St. Quentin, Rollo received the grace of baptism and became the king's faithful ally. In the Frankish world, Christianity was not merely a religion but a requirement for political legitimacy. Any foreign leader who wished to gain acceptance within the Frankish system had to convert. Rollo's baptism symbolized his entry into the Christian political order and marked his transition from enemy to ally. This political strategy was formalized through the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte. King Charles the Simple negotiated directly with Rollo and offered him land in exchange for loyalty and baptism. Charles realized that military force alone was insufficient to stabilize the northern frontier of his kingdom. As historian François Neuve emphasizes, the Christianization gave Viking rulers a legitimate place within Frankish society and transformed former raiders into allies capable of defending the region. As a result, conversion was not simply a religious chance, but a calculated political strategy that laid the foundations for the rise of Normandy.
When we think about the Vikings, we often imagine violent raids, burning villages, and fearless warriors. But the Viking story doesn't end there. Over time, many Vikings settled in Francia, converted to Christianity, and become part of the local society. And what's interesting is that even after this change, they didn't completely give up who they were. We can directly see traditional Viking values in Old Norse stories. These stories show how important bravery, honor, and faith were for Viking warriors. In Ragnar's famous death song, he says that death is not frightening if a person has lived with courage. This shows that Vikings believed living bravely mattered more than staying alive. Because that was seen as natural and unavoidable, fear was not very important. What truly mattered was taking bold and heroic action. Christian values were very different from this way of thinking. Christianity focused more on humility, forgiveness, and controlling violence. Because of this difference, becoming Christian was not easy for Viking settlers. They didn't suddenly change their beliefs overnight. Instead, they slowly adapted their old values to fit into a new religious and social system. In Normandy, Vikings accepted Christianity, built churches, and formed political alliances with Frankish nobles, and at the same time they continued to keep important parts of their Norse identity. They still valued warrior leadership, loyalty, and storytelling. These traditions remain strong even as they become part of Christian society. Over time, these two cultures mix together. This cultural blending created a new Norman identity. The Normans were not fully Viking anymore, but they were not fully Frankish either. They combined Viking strength and courage with Christian political organization. Because of this, they become powerful rulers in medieval Europe. Their success shows that cultural change doesn't always mean losing identity. Sometimes it means reshaping it into something new. In the end, the Viking experience in Francia teaches us that cultures do not simply replace each other. Instead, they interact, adapt, and combine. The Normans are a strong example of how this process can shape history in lasting and unexpected ways.